Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about at all is why are implants there in the first place?
Now, why exactly do you think that implants are necessary?
Well, I think, again, based on human logic. And let's say, you know, the human race is in a state of infancy, because we haven't been around that long. A race that may be hundreds, thousands, or maybe millions of years older than we are may not use the same logic as we do. So the answer I'm going to give you is based on our human logic. It looks like to me that the entire human race is being genetically re-manipulated again. Because if you look at the children born within the last 60, 75 years, they are not the same human as a person who was my age. In fact, a gentleman by the name of John White, who used to put on UFO conferences in the state of Connecticut, years ago recognized this, and he came up with the term Homo noeticus. Instead of Homo sapien, Homo noeticus, and that means new human. If you listen to what a child has to say today, and ask them or get a feeling for where they get their knowledge from, it's not from a book, it's not from TV, it's not off the computer. They already know it. It's a different kind of human being. So if you're doing a genetic manipulation on a population, you might want to know exactly what's going on genetically without having to abduct the individual again. So you would do it remotely, like, as I stated previously, with what we do with lesser animals. Now, would you, for example, reach into the ocean and pull out a fish and tell the fish, I'm going to put a tag on you so I can know what your swimming habits are or what you eat? No, we would pull the fish out, do our thing, put them back. We do it with manatees. I just watched Animal Planet this morning. The manatee doesn't know they have a broadcasting device. We don't explain it to them, that we want to learn about their metabolism and their eating habits and so on. So they just do it. Well, that's, kind of what they're doing with us. They put these devices in so that possibly they can gain remote information without ever having to come back and abduct us again. Now, which is another interesting thing. I've been asked, well, how come I can take them out?
Do aliens want it to be found?
That's a good question. Do aliens want it to be found? And if they didn't, I guess I wouldn't be taking them out. And then I get asked, well, who else is doing this? And as far as I know, I'm the only person in the world. And I did research. Prior to the time I did the first one, even though I thought it was going to be a funny joke, I wanted to see how many implants were taken out previously. And all I did was I read through the UFO literature, and I saw that things were taken out. They turned to powder, they disappear, they dropped, they did this, they did that, but nobody ever came up with anything. And so I do cases, and I come up with actual physical objects that can be sent to material scientific laboratories and get opinions. I mean, I can't explain that. That's strange. And if somebody had told me, 50 years ago that I would ever be doing anything like this, or would have traveled to 42 countries, or have done the things that I've done, or have done the television programs and radio programs I've done, I would have told them they were nuts.
Now, I know you've removed many implants. How similar are the implants to one another? Are they each clones of themselves, or do they vary?
Well, the implants that we have removed in the past, we have about 7 that look exactly the same. And if you lined them all up on gauze sponges, you would never tell one from the other. We have a few that are different, but I have synthetically divided them into 3 categories. Ones that are metallic and covered with a biological coating, ones that are non-metallic, and one that is biological. And each operates a little bit differently. But the 7 that we have that are metallic rods with biological coatings are virtually all the same.
Interesting. Now, do you personally believe that you've been contacted by aliens?
I would have to say the answer to that is yes. I can tell you an episode that occurred with my family, my daughter and myself, in Laughlin some years ago, which I wrote a book, I wrote a part of a book called Chopped Liver. And we talked about that incident, but during the awards banquet that we were having at the conference, I was asked to come outside with my family. So there was a lot of people who were lined up at the fence along the Colorado River. And we were in back of a lady in a white dress, and I said, what's going on? What's happening here? She said, oh, you missed them, you missed them. There was about 7 of them out here. And I said, 7 what? She said, 7 craft.
Wow.
And I said, oh, well, I started looking around, and I didn't see anything. And, you know, if you start staring at objects in the heavens, your eye muscles begin to twitch, and I thought, well, you know, these people are having what's called nocturnal nystagmus is the word for it. And then suddenly, like in the movie A Beautiful Mind, where you can look up at the heavens and you can find any geometric concentration of stars that you want to see. There's thousands, millions of them there. You know, so our attention was called to a triangle of stars. Now there was a big, bright, full moon, really bright. And right below the moon was this triangle of stars. And all 40 people seemed to be concentrating on this triangle of stars. And then suddenly the bottom 2 stars started to move. And they came downward and they went into a pair and they slowly went towards the corona of the moonlight and disappeared. And at the same time, I think everyone there got a telepathic message. Yes, we're here, believe it, bye-bye. And my daughter, who was about 12 years old at the time, said, Dad, are those folks coming back again? So, yes, I believe I have been contacted by non-terrestrial beings.
It's fascinating. Now, what would you say is the most credible argument you've ever heard for abduction?
Well, the most credible argument that I've heard for abduction in the cases that we've done surgery on would be very hard to delineate, because when we set up our set of criteria and protocols, the individual must have some kind of a memory of being associated with the abduction phenomena. When Bob Bigelow or NIDS decided to take on this responsibility of doing the metallurgy, I had to do some studying so that I could just interpret what they had to say. And I started getting reports back, and the first report we got back was they were comparing, this was Los Alamos National Laboratory. They were comparing these to meteorite samples.
Wow.
Well, we know if somebody didn't step on a meteorite or get one whacked through the back of his hand, it wouldn't have
So
it
has to come from outer space.
had to come from outer space, and they're calling them meteorite samples. So that was rather mind-blowing. So that was the beginning of the scientific aspect. So I figured, well, you know, if we're going to carry on with this, we better set up some scientific protocols and criteria for doing this kind of work. And then we formed our 501c3 nonprofit organization, ANS Research, and no charges were then ever made to any of the surgical candidates.
I see. Now, I know, because you've written a lot of books, clearly, people must have heard about them. How many people ask you, can you inspect me and see if I have any alien implants inside my body? Do you get a lot of emails per day?
Well, I get a tremendous amount of emails, sometimes 3,500 a day.
Wow.
And yes, we have now instituted a methodology, a scientific methodology for looking at the possibilities of whether somebody might have an object in their body. And Steve and I both have equipment that we can go, for example, to a conference.
Let's say, tomorrow an alien revealed himself to the general public. How would you say people would react? Would there be mayhem and riots, or how would it go?
Well, if the alien presence were known suddenly, one day, for example, I like to use the example of a huge multi-football field alien craft landing on a busy freeway during rush hour. Would there be a panic? The answer is yes, there would be a panic, because people would be on their cell phones calling Caltrans to see how long they were going to have to sit there before that thing got out of the way so they could go back to get home to watch the Lakers game. But see, it just indicates the quality of life that we have here in the United States. Probably the least important thing of an individual who lives in the United States, at least, is extraterrestrial beings. As long as it doesn't interfere with you personally, then it could be fine, or it could be not fine, or who cares? But because that relationship has been made fun of for so many years, well, we don't even take it, the common person doesn't even take it seriously. So the world is changing, and the world has got to finally know the truth. Government sources and private industry has taken over most of the knowledge of, the extraterrestrial presence.
Yeah. I guess, do you have any good guesses as to why aliens would contact us? What makes us stand out that aliens would want to put their implants inside of us?
Well, I think in order to understand what the alien approach is to human life on Earth, we have to have a good understanding of our history, which we don't, and which nobody seems to care about except a few. But if you go back and you look at ancient history, and you look at ancient paintings and wood carvings and so on, even liturgical paintings with Jesus, you're going to look up and you're going to see a typical saucer UFO craft flying around, even back in those days. So, we don't know where we came from. We've been looking for the missing link for year after year after year. Where's the missing link? If we look at the writings of Zecharia Sitchin, the late Zecharia Sitchin just passed away, and he wrote a set of books called The Earth Chronicles. And he says that 435,000 years ago, from another planet in our solar system called Nibiru, the group or race of individuals called the Anunnaki came here, and their head geneticist, whose name was Enki, manipulated what was already here into human beings.
Wow.
So if we don't understand the history of where we came from in the first place, how can we possibly understand the present or the future of where we're going with all this?
Jack Graham will now speak to Stephen Colburn, chemist and material scientist, in regards to the implants removed by the alien abductees.
So, can you tell me a bit about yourself and your role within this program?
Yeah, my name's Steve Colburn. I'm a material scientist. I was educated at UCLA, and I work in Camarillo, just a few blocks from where Dr. Lear works. And after we met, we decided to have a collaboration on analyzing these objects more thoroughly. A lot of the objects that he'd removed had not been analyzed adequately, so I've done a lot of microscopy and elemental analysis on these objects and come up with some interesting findings. One thing we found out is that the devices are definitely nanotechnological devices. They're not just simply metallic objects that somehow got into the body. They contain carbon nanotube electronics, and carbon nanotubes are the field I'm working in my regular job. And they give off radio signals, and they have odd nanostructures in them made of carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotube electronics are a hot topic in material science today. By the way, there's many amazing properties about them. The aliens have apparently perfected the technology to use carbon nanotubes in these devices. And there are proprioceptor nerves that go into these the tissue capsule or gray membrane around these devices. And one of the most fascinating findings was that these devices contain many of them contain meteoric iron judging from the trace element pattern of gallium, germanium, precious metals like iridium and platinum. And iridium is not found on Earth in any great amounts. And we did the isotopic analysis of various elements from the metallic cores of several of these devices and found out that they were made from off-planet material, extraterrestrial material. There's a certain pattern of isotopes for each element on Earth, and if that pattern is varying by more than 1% or so, then it's the conclusion can be drawn that the material came from off-planet. Some of the isotopic ratios and the elements in these devices are extremely skewed compared to quite unlike the isotopic ratios of elements on Earth. In fact, Dr. Kuntz, our colleague who's also involved in the research, concluded that they probably came from somewhere else in the galaxy. They don't even seem to be from our solar system. These devices have carbon nanotube networks inside the metal. So they're obviously manufactured devices, and they seem to be well beyond the technology of civilian science at this point.
So it's not possible that something like the nanotubes could be made through nature. It has to be manufactured.
No, they were discovered in 1991 in Western science. The Russians discovered them perhaps 10 years before that, but they're not known to be found in nature, and certainly not in meteorites.
So there's no way that it could be faked, really?
No, I don't think so. Some people have argued that these devices could be made by black government projects, but I think that the fact that they contain extraterrestrial material argues strongly against that.
So what you're saying that it was discovered in 1991, right? The nanotubes?
Yeah, and many of these objects
date
from well before the discovery of carbon nanotubes in science on Earth. These people reported that these objects were put in 30, 40 years before a lot of times.
So when you say nanotubes, do you mean that these things could be used to store information, perhaps?
Yeah, they can be made into electronic networks. Carbon nanotubes are let me give you a little bit of background. Graphite is a hexagonal array of carbon atoms, and these layers are stacked. If you take one of these layers, one of these hexagonal arrays of carbon atoms, and roll it up into a tube, that's a carbon nanotube. And there's various types of carbon nanotubes with different numbers of walls, and single wall are the most studied right now, and these contain single wall carbon nanotubes. Single wall carbon nanotubes are often less than a nanometer in diameter. These are small diameter single wall carbon nanotubes that are in these devices, and those can be used as electronics because there are metallic and semiconducting single wall carbon nanotubes.
So you're saying this is very tightly stacked, and if you took out you laid it end to end, it would definitely be a lot larger than it would. So all this information is tightly stored together, compacted?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. The total length of the carbon nanotubes in one of these things might be several miles. I haven't figured it out, but it's got to be a lot.
So the technology used to compact that much information so tightly seems to be pretty futuristic.
Definitely. I don't understand how the metal could actually be put around the carbon nanotubes without destroying the nanotubes, because the melting point of these metals is like 1500 degrees Celsius, and if you poured molten metal over the carbon nanotubes, it would just destroy them or convert them to metal carbides.
So would it be possible to say that the information required to make one of these carbon nanotubes isn't readily available on Earth? It must have come from somewhere else?
We can make carbon nanotubes, but to make a 3D intricate composite like this with carbon nanotube electronics inside the metal, that's well beyond our technology at this point. We've speculated that they might be physiological monitoring devices or listening devices. They're definitely relaying information about the subject to the aliens through radio signals. They're not always transmitting, so...
Have you noticed actual radio signals emitting from it?
We've detected radio signals coming from them, and in two of my reports we outlined some of the frequencies that they give off. The last two devices we detected radio signals from.
Are they common radio signals that are found on Earth?
Some of them are aeronautical and satellite communication frequencies, but there's also a very high frequency microwave discharges as well.
So could it be possibly dangerous to have a lot of microwaves emitting from inside a person?
I wouldn't say it's a lot of microwaves. We've only detected perhaps milliwatt levels of power, but it's hard to say. There's been no ill effects noted from anybody having these devices inside them.
What about after the surgery? Has there
In fact, they don't have any rejection or immune response by the body.
So that it's possible to not even notice these tiny things in your body?
Yeah, most people don't notice them at all.
So would it be fair to say
they see them on an X-ray?
Would it be fair to say that there might be a lot of those in a lot of different type of people?
Oh, that's very safe to say.
Wow.
Some of the frequencies that we've been able to gain some knowledge of from classified information is that they are deep space, fixed or mobile deep space frequencies. And that presents quite a conundrum because what advanced civilization would be using a radio wave to begin with?
So do you think it'd be possible that the government could know about these nanotube technologies?
I think they know about them. I don't think they can reproduce it as yet. It's anybody's guess how much technology the Black Project community has. Some of their stuff is reverse engineered alien technology, reportedly.
So would it be possible to take this apart and perhaps learn the secrets of what's inside it and perhaps use it for our own technology?
That's what we'd like to do at some point. We'd like to take one of these devices and mount it vertically on a scanning electron microscope mount and take an elemental map of one layer of the object, then etch away a layer with a beam of fast atoms, and then do the next layer and get a three-dimensional structure of the object that way.
How strong is the object? Is it easy to break?
This one, I don't know. I haven't tried to cut it yet. Most of them are fairly easy to break. I've cut 4 so far, and 3 of them are fairly easy to break. One was immensely strong and could not be cut at all. With even diamond tools wouldn't scratch it. It appeared to be some kind of highly advanced iron metal matrix composite with carbon nanotubes.
You mentioned there was a sort of biological capsule that surrounded it. Would that be used to protect it, to prevent it breakage?
No, I don't think it's to protect it. I think it's to organize the neural input to the device somehow.
Is that if we were able to back engineer some of the technology that we have in these devices, we could prevent, for example, inflammatory processes and rejection. In other words, if we could make something similar, you could wrap a heart, a kidney, a screw, a pin, or whatever in it, instill it into the human body, and the person would not have to take any anti-rejection medication for the rest of their life. So that this was presented in a report, which is in the White House, that I have a copy of from the OSTP. That's the Office of Scientific Technology and Policy, and that was handed to Obama at the time when he was trying to raise money for his medical health care problem to get Congress to approve the money.
Will President Obama, with the help of Congress, fund this medical research and reverse engineer these implants? If so, the implications could help medical technology beyond our imagination. Now, we go to the most incredible account of alien abduction explained by Dr. Roger Lear to Jack Graham.
3 young children, about 9 or 10 years of age, who lived in Tennessee. And they decided to go out on a little local camping trip. So not too many blocks away, it was kind of like an empty field and so on. So they packed their primitive sort of gear, which was blankets and things of that nature and things to cook over a fire, marshmallows and so on. And they went out and they didn't even have a tent. They used sticks. They gathered sticks and they put the blanket over the sticks to act as a tent. And they roasted their marshmallows and told jokes and so on. Well, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, they noticed that there was a very bright star up ahead, above them. And the three of them all concentrated on this star because it was so bright. And the three of them watched as this star descended closer and closer and closer. And as it got closer, they saw that it was a craft. The next thing that happened was that when the craft was about 50 feet over their heads, a beam of bluish-white light in a cone came down over the three of them, and they began to levitate up in this cone of light. Now, if someone had done that to me at my age, I'd have a little bit of trepidation because, you know, if you're going up in a cone of light, I mean, the first thing that would come to my mind would be the fear of
Panic.
Falling back down.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing holding you. But they had the absolute opposite feeling. Oh, wow, this is fun. We're having fun. You know, we're going up in this light. So they get up into the craft, and then they're in a round room that kind of looks like a hangar. And there are typical bumper sticker gray beings that are there. And so they say, well, you know, what's happening? Man, what's going on? I said, you know, have no fear. You're going to be returned. You'll be fine. We're just going to, you know, take a look at you folks for a few minutes and so on. But their fear was in being separated. Greater fear for each other than for each as an individual. Then when they finally were separated, they were taken down different corridors that went off this room. And under hypnotic regression is when they described what they saw off the corridors, which were rooms that looked like hospital rooms. And the one that we went through most of the hypnotic regression was placed in a room, unclothed, and placed on a table that he couldn't tell whether it was jutting out of the wall or whether it was on a pedestal. And although he thought it was metallic, it was neither hot nor cold. It was very form-fitting. But then an instrument was used that he described that actually put the implant in his wrist. And when he did this, he didn't feel too much of anything. But if he got nervous and so on, always one of the gray beings would come very close to him, and with their black eyes, they would get very close and look into their eyes, and this aura of calmness would come over them. Once this was done, they were examined and taken out, and the three kids were back together again in this large hangar-like room. And the next thing they remember, they're lying back on the campsite again, and the craft is slowly moving up, and bang, it was gone. So they didn't know what to think, whether they had a nightmare or something happened, or just didn't understand the entire situation. One of the things that makes this case so unusual is that all three kids did something very strange after that, like a suggestion was put in their heads or whatever, but they actually stole into this person's backyard that had a vegetable garden, and they tore up the vegetables and ate them. And that's one of the most unusual cases that I've heard of yet. So they must have been told to do this for some reason, because some folks that are involved in the abduction phenomena come back with symptoms. They feel muscle aches, pain, fatigue, feelings of the flu, dehydration, and so on. But the three kids, in asking them questions, of course they weren't kids when we did the surgery, but in asking them, if they had any ill effects from it, they don't recall anything. So maybe what they got out of the vegetables was something that obliterated the symptoms that abductees have.
Now, what procedures and protocols do you follow for the surgery?
Well, the procedures and protocols that we follow have to be kept 100% in order to make this a scientific study, because we try and stay with the scientific method. One of the things we do is when a patient contacts me, they have to convince me that they have an object, and that's either through an X-ray or a CAT scan. We don't accept MRIs because MRIs can produce false positives for foreign objects. For example, in an MRI, if you're looking through a slice right through the top of a blood vessel and there's blood flowing through a vessel, you'll see a nice bright spot. But that's not a foreign object. All it is a cut through a blood vessel. So if they send me X-rays or a CAT scan, then I take them to the radiologist and I get it confirmed that this is a foreign body, and what his guesstimation of the material is. Is it more dense than the surrounding bone? Is it less dense than the surrounding bone? We know if it's more dense than the surrounding bone, it's probably on the metallic side. Also, we have other consultants that we use. For example, we've had a couple of cases that were dental cases, and these were dental x-rays. So we have dental experts that go ahead and will look at the x-rays, and then want to make suggestions as to whether they need further films, a Panorex or a CAT scan. So once it's been established that there is an object there, then the next thing we do is we send that client a package of questions, and they have to answer all the questions. There are no right and there are no wrong answers, but it gives us a complete background of what the possibility of their actually being involved with the abduction program is. Also, one of the forms amongst this questionnaire is a gradable form on probabilities. So if they're over 35% probable, then they've been involved. Now, lots of people step on things. Lots of people have, they want 2 seconds of fame on television or to get filmed. There's a lot of reasons for people that contact me. They may be not abductees at all. Some abductees don't get along well with the problems. And as the late John Mack wrote in his book, there are 7 traumas that are involved with alien abduction, and only one of them is the event itself. Another one is who are you going to tell? Who's going to believe you? So you have this argument that goes on continuously. So a lot of these people are not well adjusted. A lot of abductees have problems. They can become alcoholics, drug addicts. They can be confined in mental institutions. So you have to sift out these people to become part of this study, and this is one of the first things we do. Then once they are accepted as a possible surgical candidate, do they want the surgery? Do they want it removed? And if so, if they agree that they do want it removed, they have to understand that the product that we're going to remove becomes the ownership becomes part of ANS research, and that we promise to give to the rest of the world as scientific knowledge. And if they're not willing to do that, then we don't accept them as a patient. So if we look at statistical numbers, let's say 10% out of 100 might be a true surgical candidate. 1% of them will only be ones that will operate on.
Now, have any scientists tried to talk to you and give possible explanations for what it is instead of aliens, and try to prove you wrong?
When I talk to the academic scientific community, they're also interested in the analysis and the intrigue of what they're looking at on a scientific academic basis. That they don't even offer a lot of times suggestions. If we do it and they're being paid, for example, for a television program, they'll actually get them to lie on camera.
Wow.
Also, scientists, by and large, are prey to higher masters, as other people, in other fields of occupations do. They have to earn their paycheck. They have to feed their families. So, and they could be threatened. They can be threatened by any agency of the government, for example. Not so much anymore, but in earlier years, yes.
To what extent do you think is the government hiding information from us? Do you think they know? Do you think they have contact with aliens?
I think that the government historically has made contact with aliens, and there's most probably been deals that have been made. We have enough witnesses now, for example, Holloman Air Force situation in which at Holloman Air Force Base where Air Force One was seen to land. The base was literally frozen. No one could move from their post when this was going on. There was lots of witnesses to things that were happening. Two electricians, up on a pole were told to stay there and not move till all this was over, and that was near the runway. Then they saw 3 circular craft come flying overhead. One of them began to hover over the runway when Air Force One stopped. Another one took off and went 20 miles away and hovered over a park. And the third one was somewhere else lingering around. And it was said by the lineman who had a good view of this whole thing that President Eisenhower at the time, got out of that plane, walked over to the craft. They saw a ramp come down. He walked up the ramp and shook hands with some kind of a non-human being. Went in, was there for about 20 minutes, came back out again. The alien craft took off. Air Force One took off. And instead of following the rules and regs that they had set up for landings at that base, they took off and flew directly within 50 feet off the roof of the hospital.
Jeez.
So this has been, cited as one of the examples, but certain presidents were in the know, certain presidents were not probably in the know. And today, I believe that the situation is totally different. I believe that most of this information today is in the hands of the giant monarchs of industry, these multilateral companies that are, some of them are part of the military-industrial complex, and some of them are industry itself. And it's the greed that keeps propelling this on and on and on. But it looks like they're getting to the point now where they're starting to eat each other, because I guarantee you that Standard Oil, with its concentration on fossil fuel energy, is not really interested in what Monsanto is doing, making GMO foods. And Monsanto with GMO foods is not really interested in a free energy system that somebody else might develop. So things are changing rapidly, and of course with the citizen hearing that's going to be held at the end of the month in Washington, D.C., and it will be streamed out to the world. We expect half the population of the world to watch this congressional hearing, and hope that the government will actually start releasing information.
With trillions of planets in the universe, it's hard to believe that planet Earth is unique. Odds are that life exists elsewhere. And while life on some planets may be less advanced than us, chances are that more advanced life forms will also exist. So the question becomes, will these advanced life forms have the ability to travel to Earth? And, if so, secretly tag us with extraterrestrial hardware during their visits? Prior to interviewing Dr. Lear, I might have said no. But while I still have my doubts, Dr. Lear makes a fascinating case for this, and now I'd like to know more.
Jack, in his quest for the answer, has reached out to Third Phase of Moon to speak with the alien abductees who've had implants removed by Dr. Roger Lear. We have provided him the contact information. Mary, who wants to remain anonymous, and Tim Cullen have come forward to speak with Jack and answer his questions in regards to their alien abduction and the implants removed by Dr. Roger Lear.
Hi, I'm Jack. Tell me about your abduction.
I have had, my family, it runs in my family. My brother has had experiences his family, since the marriage, has had experiences. My husband underwent experiences, as did I, from being married into my family. It seems like that was the protocol for marrying into the family. And because I had unusual experiences from the time I was really, really small, and my brother too, from the time he was an infant. And I believe they started with my mom and dad, because my dad had some sightings. I had a sighting. My mother had a sighting of a UFO over our home. It ran in the family, and there were a lot of experiences that my husband and I had in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And he would actually get night terrors, which we thought were from, he was a Vietnam veteran, had experiences in Vietnam, and thought it was post-traumatic stress syndrome. It turns out it wasn't from Vietnam. He actually then started remembering in the early 90s that the night terrors he was experiencing was from these creatures being in our home and taking us at night.
What was your reaction when you realized you had been abducted by extraterrestrials?
Let's see, it was removed in 1996, probably about 6 months to a year sooner. Before that, I realized I had a scoop mark on my leg, and I did not know there was an implant in there. I had no idea. I just saw this scar on my leg and on my left calf. And when Roger was, I was assistant section director and then section director of MUFON for Ventura, Santa Barbara counties, and Roger was helping me, and he had arranged to do surgeries, and he had gotten funding through Bigelow, and for 3 surgeries, we had 3 people that were going to have supposed implants removed. Roger had gone through the x-ray process and exam process. Well, one of them was Whitley Strieber. He had an object in his ear, and he was to be one of our guest speakers and then go ahead and have a surgery. Last minute, he decided against having the object removed from his ear, and it's on the outside of his ear. He still has it today. It's under the skin on the back of the ear. And he decided against it. Well, we had funding for 3 surgeries, and Roger was, Dr. Lear was beside himself as to, what was he going to do? And I said, well, you can remove this scar off my leg, whatever it is. I don't know how I got it, but make that the 3rd surgery. And he said, that's fine. He says, but we have to go through the examination process. We'll need to get x-rays, blood tests, which we did. And on the x-ray, surprising both to myself and him, he saw an object on the x-ray that was just under the scar, the scoop mark I had. And that's how we discovered that there was actually an object under the scoop mark.
What was your reaction to the news that aliens had implanted a device in you?
I was shocked that there was anything under that scoop mark to begin with. I didn't know how I obtained that mark, but it was an unusual mark, and it seemed to just appear. At least I just noticed it. I think he was shocked because that was the first time he had ever had a scoop mark with an object under it. So he was shocked. I was shocked. And I kept trying to, rationalize that, maybe I just got something in my leg. And after it was, extracted and examined, it was nothing. I kept saying, are you sure this wouldn't be found in a regular body? Is there any way? And he goes, no, Alice. This would not be found in your leg. It could not, it would not be there naturally by any means. It wasn't a calcification or anything like that. It had a lot of unusual characteristics, and he's since then done some more surgeries that have had the same type of object.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I think he's doing something that is so important, and he helps so many people, and he never asks for anything, in return from anybody that he tries to help. he's just, he's doing it because he has not only the ability to do it, but he has the need to find out what is really going on, a curiosity as to what's going on. It's affected him, everything he does, his life, his career. He's very dedicated to trying to find out, what these objects are, and also with these objects we're finding that they have no inflammatory response around the object. Could this technology help the medical profession now in dealing with transplants, where these people with transplants have to be on horrific medications for many, many years, where if this technology could be developed where there would be no rejection. I mean, it would be wonderful for the people that have to go through this with the transplants. So, I mean, he's doing it for a lot of reasons, but he does it. It's a labor of love for him and curiosity, and he feels very dedicated to trying to help people, because a lot of people, with these type of situations, they just don't know who to turn to or what to do. Unfortunately, he's there to try to help.
Where is your chip implanted?
The implant was it was located in my left wrist area, arm wrist area, almost identical to the 15th surgery Dr. Lear done on Ron Noel. His implant is the same shape as mine, a cantaloupe seed type object, and located in basically the left wrist area. In fact, we kind of wonder if we could almost put the x-rays over each other and they'd almost be in the same spot.
Did it hurt after the surgery?
Yeah, when they got a hold of the object, I felt it a lot of pressure and uncomfortable with my arm.
A spacecraft of unknown origin that utilized extraordinarily advanced technology for propulsion, communication, surveillance, and scientific inquiry. This technology was previously only theorized by scientists. This shocking discovery prompted President Harry S. Truman to organize the Majestic 12, an elite group of high-level government officials, military officers, scientists, and academicians. They devised a plan to dissect and assess the potential application of these technologies for military and commercial use. This process came to be known as reverse engineering. With the advent of the Cold War, the Majestic 12 and its program was conducted under the highest level of secrecy since the Manhattan Project. Their goal was to disseminate these technologies to the private sector at firms which were already developing technologies garnered from the war effort. In August of 1947, an alien-created microcircuitry artifact was delivered to Bell Labs. Bell Labs was ready for the challenge of reverse engineering. Within 5 months, by December of that same year, Bell Labs would introduce to the public the first electronic transistor. Bell Labs physicists Walter Brattain, John Bardeen, and William Shockley were the first to successfully reverse engineer microcircuitry. This first example of reverse engineered technology showed crudeness in the area of micromanipulation of particles. The revolutionary ability to control electrons would permanently replace the crude vacuum tube bulb.
First of all, Shockley and his team had been working on transistor technology. Of course, nobody called it a transistor back then, but they were working on this technology, basically an electronic gate to send electrons through that was more efficient than the vacuum tube. Now, the workbench notes that they had back then, the notes themselves were reverse engineered. They didn't publish those workbench notes until after 1949.
Soon, all life on Earth would be affected by this application of outside information. On the day that was declared the day of discovery, life on this planet changed. Later, General Arthur Trudeau took over the responsibility of distributing technological artifacts from U.S. Army R&D offices at the Pentagon. Colonel Philip J. Corso, intelligence officer for Army Research and Development at the Pentagon, was the first to step forward with information about alien technology.
In 1997, when Lieutenant Colonel Corso published his national best-selling book, neither the federal government nor any corporation or individual sought to discredit or refute his revelations about the Pentagon distributing alien technology to the private sector.
All this was known, only it wasn't known in the form where we gave an artifact to somebody. We gave them research and development projects.
One of the things that strikes you most about Philip Corso is not just the fact that he sounds credible, but when you go into his background and you look at the places he's been and where he served and what assignments he's had through the different wars from World War II through Korea, then back to the Pentagon, when you look at that, what you see is that the guy just rings credible. He is like rivet plate metal. Trudeau brought him in. He sat at the foreign technology desk as the deputy at that desk for 90 days, and then he went black. He went secret and became Trudeau's deputy and carry out Trudeau's own assignment, which was get this material from the spacecraft into American industry, the only place it could be safe.
Are these alien technologies? What kinds of applications did we reverse engineer from outside technologies?
Here, Corso said in 1961, he was looking at what turned out to be a fully functional electronic microcircuit. And they brought those, he said, to Bell Labs because they knew that back in 1947, Trudeau had told him that the Truman administration, that the Army had brought wiring panels from that, they called it a lander. They called it an alien lander. They brought that to New Jersey, where Bell Labs was. And what Truman said to them back in 1947 was, he didn't know what this was, but he said, what is the lowest common denominator? What is the least complicated device you can create, you can reverse engineer from this?
How did we show seeming mastery of the atom without a complete understanding of it? For thousands of years, our concept of the atom was very simple. Only now do we know otherwise. Albert Einstein was the first known theorist on stimulated emission and general and special relativity. These provided a simple conception of the atom for people of the 20th century.
One of these atoms probably would appear as a tiny elastic sphere, a sphere formed by negatively charged electrons swarming around a massive nucleus of positive electricity.
Public opinion holds Albert Einstein as the foremost authority of the atom. Yet, he did all of his work without ever actually seeing one. Today's scientific activity is being done on the quantum level. Theoretical universal string theories contradict some of Einstein's presumptions on the nature of universal law. Regardless of how scientific theory has developed, recent trends in reverse engineering of alien technology couldn't have begun without these scientific foundations.
What does the atom mean to us today? No one had ever seen the atom until the present, but the concept has already helped shape society. Is the microchip an intrusion from an outside source? There should have been a parallel in our understanding of what was being created. Without a parallel comprehension of this technological quantum leap, the result has been social disintegration, alienation, and dysfunction. Our scientific understanding has reached downward to the submolecular world and upward to a new global awareness. Yet these advances contradict a diminishing sense of both community and of our responsibility to Earth and to its future generations. The reverse engineering theory holds that the most advanced technology is the result of an outside influence.
Looking at technological advances today and trying to explain how those breakthroughs came about in our society. Either way, reverse engineering fits right along with the natural progression of things when new technologies emerge.
Critics of this viewpoint put reverse engineering into a category that includes paranormal mythology. Well, this is merely an excuse to discount evidence that would lead to a new perspective. Nevertheless, the microchip has become an integral part of many of the electrical machines and appliances that we use today. Its fundamental purpose is to manipulate electrons at the molecular level to perform as electronic switches. In 1958, it was Jack Kilby who was credited with inventing the microchip.
In 1965, semiconductor pioneer Gordon Moore predicted that the number of transistors contained on a computer chip would double every year. This is now known as Moore's Law. Deciphering the microprocessor took 23 years. The microprocessor brought us to increased speed of control of information. In 1970, when Ted Hoff revealed the microprocessor, how much was known about electron behavior? For decades, electrons worked in microprocessors while scientists tried to figure out exactly how they worked. At that time, research was still all in theory. We had no understanding of micro-manipulating mechanisms, ion beam implantation, and electron beam lithography, all used now in manufacturing of electronics. Picosecond imaging circuit analysis is currently used at IBM to study the behavior of electrons in microprocessors. Circuit analysis has produced this high-powered camera to study microcircuitry. A picture of the speeding electron is taken within a trillionth of a second. It has been 40 years since the microchip was invented. Why only now are researchers seeing the submolecular level? Since we can only now recognize electrons at the atomic level, does this support the notion that reverse engineering produced this technology?
Is our modern use of microchips and other advanced technologies actually a result of alien technology? Why was the development of alien technology so clandestine? And why would it be so harmful for the public to have this knowledge? What would happen if we learned about the true origins of the laser?
Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. In 1958, surrounded by much controversy, the laser was introduced. The controversy was a result of the dispute over the question of the inventor of the laser. The litigation that ensued only confuses the fact that no one can claim to be the sole inventor of these technologies.
Well, the basic idea really isn't so very complicated. This is a system for amplifying light waves, and it does it something like this, that inside of this tube, we give atoms excess energy by passing an electric current through them. The light wave travels through these atoms then, takes away some of their energy, and thereby amplifies the light wave. It becomes more and more energetic. It's reflected here, passes through again, is amplified more, reflected again, and passes back and forth many times until it becomes very intense. And one can see here the beam coming out. It travels along a very long distance without spreading very much.
Credited as the inventors of the laser, did Arthur Scalo, Charles Towns, or Gordon Gould know where the outside information came from? The laser comes from the application of stimulated emission to a crystal. A photon is introduced through optical pumping. Mirrors are used for multiplying the emission of active photons. How was the idea of the use of mirrors introduced into laser development? This burst in radiation, as all the atoms discharge photons, results in a cascade of light. The beam generated by most lasers is pencil thin and maintains its size and direction over great distances.
Army laboratory at Columbia University, which staged its first test on a laser right around 1960. That's where they took the laser cutting tool. Not to say this is what a laser is. They already knew what a laser was. What they needed was a working benchmark model of what they could reverse engineer to get a quantum leap on the very technology they were trying to develop.
Technology has now harnessed light. The molecular arrangement of crystal gives direction to light. It is the same molecular arrangement that contains light. We now control information in this light. Some of the companies that were involved in reverse engineering of fiber optics are Bell Labs, Hughes Aircraft, General Electric, IBM, and Corning Glass. Research was done by thousands of people before the mystery of light unraveled. Unlike Thomas Edison and the light bulb, people are not aware that Charles Kao contributed to one of the greatest achievements in technology, the harnessing of light. Why isn't Kao a household name? Has he been lost in the process of reverse engineering?
Fiber optics have been manufactured and sold to the public with no question as to its origins. 1,000,000 years of evolution overnight. How did this happen?
Smaller than a human hair, the fiber is 2 layers, a crystal core with a glass layer. 2 strands of fiber optic cables can carry over 1,000 conversations. Light is reflected inward from the interface of the 2 layers. Even though alien crystal fiber applications may surpass our current scientific understanding, fiber optics is so far our greatest reverse engineering achievement. Evidence of high technology continues to surface from locations all around the world, dating back thousands of years. The precision attained by these artifacts is a paradox. Present-day scholars remain mystified by the high technology of the ancients. No accurate record has ever been found which has information about the origins of these technologies. Frank Drake, Harvard astronomer, formulated an equation to speculate at the number of intelligent, communicating civilizations there are in our galaxy. N represents the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Current estimates of this number are 100 billion. P is the fraction of stars that have planets around them. Current estimates range from 20% to 50%. E is the number of planets per star that are capable of sustaining life. Estimates range from 1 to 5. L is the fraction of planets in E, where life evolves. I is the fraction of L, where intelligent life evolves. C is the fraction of I that communicate. L is the fraction of the planet's life during which the communicating civilizations live. The answer, N, is the number of communicating civilizations in the galaxy. According to Drake, even the most pessimistic estimates yield hundreds to thousands of communicating civilizations. Through the media, we are already sensitized to the possibility of alien life forms. To maintain a logical perspective is a challenge considering our point of reference is only the popular media.
The dominant worldview that we've all been raised in for several hundred years now is that we are alone in a lifeless universe. I think even if a better worldview or a more truthful one or one that opens up consciousness to a much more interesting universe, even when that would be the result, change is still resisted because whatever your existing worldview is, it gives us a kind of complacent sense that we understand our world, and when something comes along that completely shatters that, then we don't understand. We don't have control. Anything else can follow, you know.
We're not human!
A half a century ago, alien technology made an immediate impact.
On Halloween night of 1938, Orson Welles' radio program War of the Worlds showed just how Americans would react to news of alien contact. The program caused pandemonium. Some people even committed suicide.
Turn you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, here I am. Wait a minute, something's happening. Is
She had the flames springing from the mirror and it leaped right at the advancing men. Lord, they're turning into flames.
Extremely surprised to learn that a story which has become familiar to children through the medium of comic strips should have had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. The whole world is under attack. Can it survive?
The U.S. government took note of the public's reaction to the show. Since then, the government's position has been very cautious on this topic.
I don't know what the government knows about this. There isn't the government anyway. There are different pockets within the government that guard certain knowledge they have very closely. So I really don't know, but I am struck by the fact that government agencies, when they do have to speak about this, will send out the most naked disinformation. There's this level of sort of committed ignorance around this, which is, I think, extraordinary. It's as if any kind of ignorance, any kind of distortion is okay if it's in the service of not letting in certain unacceptable information.
James Forrestal was a member of the Majestic 12 group, and it was suspected that information that he had from his tenure with Majestic 12 contributed to his tragic death. He was an admiral in the Pacific Fleet during World War II, and his military accomplishments were honored by the aircraft carrier bearing his name.
In March of 1949, James Forrestal jumped out of his window at the Bethesda Naval Hospital just months after resigning his position as First Secretary of Defense.
A shocked nation mourns the tragic death of James Forrestal, America's first Secretary of Defense.
Why would a celebrated hero of World War II then commit suicide during peacetime? Was his reaction no different than those who heard War of the Worlds? What information did he have about this conspiracy that he brought to his grave? The government continues to be silent.
It's interesting, when something is attacking or challenging the ideology of a culture, then anything goes. The media can do anything. They can present distortions, lies, bring in people who don't know anything in a way that you can't do in other fields, which is really kind of interesting, which again reflects the fact that, you know, anything but that this should be true. Any weapon can be used to fight this reality in terms of how it gets represented to the public.
Ever since the middle of the century, Americans have been getting accustomed to the notion that we are not alone in the universe.
I think there's no question that the tendency to show extraterrestrial encounters as either comical or sinister does influence a certain number of people who don't know any better. There's a tendency to represent the contact with whatever you want to call this, this other, this intelligence that's reaching us, tends to represent it as frightening, as dark, taking over. We have to fight them, you know, sort of like movies like Independence Day, which show us somehow conquering this terrible alien invasion.
The public's views showed a dramatic change during the early 60s with a boom in popularity of sci-fi movies.
The public felt a sense of security by relegating alien contact to the realm of entertainment, while in the real world, the government tried to explain away UFOs with reasons like swamp gas and weather balloons.
New movies and broadcasting has proved that society's views have evolved.
The public is more open to this than the elite, you know, the general public. If I meet people in a bar, in the street, or have seen something I've done on TV, they, oh yeah, we understand that. That makes sense.
Popular culture has portrayed extraterrestrials in a more intellectual light.
Individuals in the military have come forward with contact information, but no official statement has been made to confirm or deny any such evidence. Whenever such evidence is brought forward by a private citizen, the response has generally been skepticism. As a result, the public remains doubtful about the credibility of these phenomena because of insufficient information. Perhaps the only logical conclusions that we can draw are the ones that come from our own self-examination.
The kind of technology that we now have is a product essentially of the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution. And that is why I spent so much time researching the story of the Luddites. Because the Luddites were people in England at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution who said, wait, what is this technology going to do to us in particular, to our jobs, to our families, to our communities, to the environment? And they said they didn't like these new steam technologies coming in. They didn't like these new factories that were being produced because they did people out of jobs. And they said they took their torches and they took their rifles and they took their hammers and they smashed those factories. The government of England, in response to this, mounted the greatest armed force against its own citizens that it has ever done. And within about 3 or 4 years managed to put down this Luddite rebellion. And so the Industrial Revolution was allowed to proceed. These people were done out of their jobs, their communities were destroyed, the environment was black. And this is the kind of stuff that Dickens eventually wrote about. The awful price that had to be paid so that the Industrial Revolution could succeed. And so I wrote about these Luddites and told the story of what they did then, and then I tried to bring it forward 150 years to talk about the people today who are resisting the trends of modern high technology.
The fact is that the initial Big Bang of technological innovation and progress was soon followed by the marriage of the military elite to private companies who exploited this technology and have made billions of dollars from it.
Silicon Valley produces 68 millionaires per week. It has opened up the economy to a whole new territory.
NASA Ames Research and Silicon Valley are recognizing that alien technology is now public knowledge. Yet the government is still secretive about reverse engineering that is continuing today. For example, special agents from NASA's Office of the Inspector General are investigating private entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley.
On October 5th, 1999, I did a story for the San Francisco Examiner about a meeting that was going to be held here in California between people at the NASA Ames Research Center and high-tech Silicon Valley executives. We checked it out and it turned out that they were indeed going to have this meeting. Subsequent to that story, got a call from a NASA investigator that was really concerned because at that meeting they were going to be talking about propulsion technologies, and Joe Firmager is interested in those technologies because he firmly believes that there is reverse engineering of alien technologies that have helped Silicon Valley be what it is today.
Thinking about the computer revolution and its effect on society, you would be blind not to realize how dangerous and pernicious and evil it has been. And I say that in the full recognition that there are individuals who have benefited from it, and that there are certain connections that have been made, and people love to have their email, and they love to be able to be online for this and that. But all of that is trivial. Trivial, whatever tiny personal enjoyments or benefits it has produced for individuals. The important thing about this technology is to see what it has done to the world. It's true that a few will be richer and richer, but what happens in a society, in a global society, where there are just a few rich and there are masses of poor? It is unsustainable. What I'm spelling out for you here is a scenario that inevitably leads to tragedy. And we can see it happening already. But I think it won't be more than 20 years or so before all of this collapses. Because we have these dominant government corporate forces eating up the world, pushing people aside, and attempting to create a world that is entirely artificially, entirely technology dominated. A technosphere that will eliminate the biosphere.
Alien technology causes destruction of our environment at a rapid rate. Its power is beyond what we are able to control. The destructive effects reach out to all areas of the Earth and the life that it sustains. How much time do we have before it is too late to reverse the damage from alien technology? People, disconnected from nature, abuse our ecosystem, which degrades our planet to near fatal levels. Our production of waste rivals our production of technologies that improve the human condition.
Think of this. Over there on Wall Street is the beginning process by which $4 trillion is being traded around the world every single day. $4 trillion. Now, you don't trade that stuff buying and selling around the world without having an effect, a real-life effect upon the jobs and the lives and the communities of people. But the psychological effects of all of this are to distance people from the real things that they need in their lives. Love, sodality, community, poetry, dreams, all of the important things. So what I see happening is an accumulation of environmental crises melding with these economic and political crises so that the whole thing collapses. Now, it's possible that the human species will survive that. But it will do so only if it's in vastly reduced numbers, people living in small, nature-regarding communitarian societies. That is to say, tribal societies, much the way humans have lived from 90% of the time they've been on Earth. They've lived in those kinds of nature-loving, nature-regarding, small-scale societies. I think it's possible that we might get back to that. On the other hand, if the pollution, if the destruction is as great as it might well be, it will threaten the existence of the human species on the Earth.
Is this the first global technological crisis of its kind? Are we living in a world where all of the technology that we depend on could stop functioning? Or does alien technology have a manifest destiny of its own to dominate the globe?
Alien technology has fragmented our system of representation. It fragments communities and alienates people from each other as it takes control. The portability of information may ultimately erode privacy. Soon, people will carry their electronic identity within their skin. This information will be read and tracked by anyone who has the equipment to do so.
The gap between those who control the technological machinery and those who are controlled by it may determine what life will be like for the next generation.
Will there be more government control over the economy? Will there be more government control over our lives?
A bold new world order.
Or is it technology that is controlling our lives? In politically underdeveloped countries, alien technology has fatal consequences. The U.S. military will not come forward with information surrounding the development of alien technology. Research continues as defense technology reaches for more sophisticated and lethal weapons. The government's priority is to maintain military and economic supremacy and keep the secrets of alien technology that created its power. The American defense system has increased its contractual research with private companies. These companies research independently and operate under total secrecy under the authority of national security.
In his 1961 farewell address to the nation, President Eisenhower warned us of the dangers caused by the very situation that our country finds itself in today.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
The social, economic, political, and environmental consequences of the unbridled rapid growth of technology in all phases of our lives beget a fundamental question. Are we the master of, or the slaves to high technology? Do we expect technology to be the solution to our problems? Perhaps we have lost the ability to reassert control over our lives. We may be so technologically dependent that any failure in the system could lead to a catastrophe like a nuclear meltdown. Can we forestall or prepare for such a catastrophe if we are unable or unwilling to address these issues now at a time of unprecedented prosperity?
Every major city in the United States is a part of only 3 power grids that supply all of our energy. These systems were built on a computer language called COBOL, Common Business Oriented Language. This computing language was developed by the U.S. Navy in 1957 under the authority of Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter of Harry Truman's Majestic 12. Naval officer G.M. Hopper directed the group that wrote the COBOL language. Why was the U.S. Navy involved in creating a language for use in our land-based power grids? Was the Navy's programming knowledge the only way to reverse engineer alien processors?
Socially, we are in danger of losing our sense of humanity, our sense of morality, even our sense of family and its critical role in our society. We need to assess the consequences our frenzied electronic way of life has on our planet.
Breakthroughs in medical and drug research hold out the promise of treatment, cure, and prevention of our most dreaded diseases, even cancer and AIDS. Computer technology enhances our ability to diagnose, treat, and cure illness. Magnetic resonance imaging can provide doctors with detailed 3D images of affected organs and tissues. Advances in cardiac surgery techniques continue to enable physicians and practitioners to battle the #1 killer in the United States, heart disease. Nearly 1,000 satellites orbit the Earth daily and contribute to our increased knowledge of our planet and its atmosphere and weather. Scientists deploy increasingly sophisticated weather radar. Forecasts pinpoint dangerous weather patterns today more quickly and accurately than ever before.
Good evening. Hurricane Andrew continues on its path towards the southeast Florida coast at this hour. The center of the hurricane is expected to cross the Dade-Broward area sometime between 6 and 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Because of this advanced technology, communities have more time to take emergency measures in the face of a violent storm. The deployment of the Hubble telescope in the mid-1990s allows man to see to the very edge of the universe. Extraordinary images of deep space astonish and electrify us. The recent World Trade Organization protests in Seattle were led by labor, environmental, humanist neo-Luddites, and fringe groups focused on economic and environmental issues. Yet pollution and waste have already done substantial damage. Ironically, a comparatively low-tech alternative to fossil fuel and uranium is wind power. In some regions, it provides clean, reliable energy which could significantly reduce our reliance on imported oil, coal, or nuclear power. Unfortunately, the nuclear power industry is encouraged to develop through government subsidies several times the amount that solar or wind power development will ever receive. With the internet eclipsing 1 billion pages and counting, today's e-revolution is spurring an unprecedented global economic boom. E-commerce is expected to top several $1 trillion in the next few years. Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Federal Reserve, pointed out the critical role of high technology in the growth and reshaping of our economy and society.
There are few signs to date of slowing in the pace of innovation and the spread of our newer technologies that, as I have indicated in previous testimonies, have been at the root of our extraordinarily impressive productivity improvement. What is uncertain is the future pace of the application of these innovations, because it is this pace that governs the rate of change in productivity and economic potential.
Since nearly any human being can link up individually to the rest of the world, the Internet may be the greatest mechanism of democracy ever made. Yet with such unlimited worldwide access to each other, how will our lives be affected? Just in the last few months, serious concerns over privacy and safety on the net have spurred government and corporate responses to arrest and prosecute hackers and other criminals. We may never find definite answers to the mysteries of alien technologies, but because of mankind's discovery and development of extraterrestrial tools, humanity has raced generations beyond our time closer to our own enlightenment, or destruction, as a species.
Furthermore, the rapid pace of technological change has only magnified these problems. So where does it all end? The disparity between the rich and poor nations and individuals continues to grow. The destruction of the rainforests and other habitat, nuclear proliferation, biological weapons, global warming, and ozone depletion show the immediate and direct consequences of technology gone amok. America is the largest arms merchant in the world. This undermines our credibility as a nation of peace. Recent wars in Iraq and Yugoslavia also show the trend toward high-tech electronic warfare, where drones, cruise missiles, and global positioning satellites enable the Pentagon to wage truly impersonal surgical war. Since the Big Bang of technology in the mid-20th century, we have seen the application and misapplication of this reverse-engineered alien technology in every aspect of our lives. We must raise our consciousness on a personal, emotional, global, and even spiritual level. We need to demystify and emasculate the iconography of technology. Maybe we can think and act less selfishly, with a greater sense of community, both locally and globally. Collectively, we can insist that our government, major corporations, academia, and the military seriously consider the consequences of our technological revolution. As citizens, we must insist our leaders address these issues both here and abroad. Globally, the U.S., as the world's sole superpower, must take the lead in shaping and applying high technology. America and its allies must press for a more thoughtful, slower approach to technological change. The Internet is the latest and perhaps an especially sinister example of high technology being used to foster racism, bigotry, and hatred. Our power is not through one person or group or nation. Collectively, we as human beings must fight against complacency, indifference, and ignorance. The world is shrinking every day, and we must act now to save our own humanity. The infinite power of the human mind and spirit can help us harness technology while protecting and healing ourselves and Mother Earth. Otherwise, we may eventually be doomed to nuclear, biological, or technological oblivion.